Hi everyone. So today we're going to do chapter 4. Chapter 4 is called The Act of Expression. And the chapter 5 is called The Expressive Object. So what is useful to know before we start is in the last chapter we mentioned that building is both a noun form and the verb form. Building means building something as a verb, but also it could mean the end product of the building, act of building, which is building. So just like that, we could think of it like that. What I mean by that is expressing as in verb form is dealt in chapter 4, the act of expression, and the end product of that expressing which is expression, is dealt in chapter 5. So with that, I will start. And this is my rosemary, and I got this. I got this because I wanted it, but I have this with me in the video because all the settings are so similar and same that I thought I need to jazz it up a bit. Okay, so I'm going to start up with an anecdote. What anecdote? Of Picasso, Pablo Picasso, one of the greatest artists of all time. So Picasso was sitting in the bench in the park one day, and this woman comes up to him. She recognized him. She asks to him, "Can you draw me a portrait of me?" And he somehow agrees, and he draws her portrait in like split seconds. And when she got that portrait, she's like so happy, really happy. And she asked like, "How much should I pay you?" And Picasso says 5,000 franc. Franc is the previous form of euro, so that is quite a lot of money for something. I mean, in her head, she was like confused and a little bit furious and asked Picasso, "You draw this. It took you seconds to draw this. Why do I have to pay 5,000 francs?" And Picasso said, "No, madame. It didn't took me a few seconds. It took my whole life to be able to draw like this." Why do I start with this anecdote? Because in this chapter, what John Dewey wants to say is that artistic expression, or expression, the true expression, is not just the discharging of emotion, but rather it is the process that gets born after the fermentation within us. So, with this anecdote, we can clearly see that Picasso, it took him his whole life to be able to simplify things like that, make everything like cubes and stuff. So, a good anecdote to start with. And to start with, I'm going to use John Dewey's word too. It's quite well put. So this is actually not John Dewey's word itself. It's by William James. And he wrote about religious experience, might well have been written about too difficult. William James said something that coincides what John Dewey wants to say. So he quoted William James, and here it goes. "A man's conscious wit and will are aiming at something only dimly and inaccurately imagined. Yet all the while, the forces of the mere organic ripening within him are going on to their own prefigured result, and his conscious strainings are letting loose subconscious allies behind the scenes, which in their way work towards rearrangement, and the rearrangement toward which all these deeper forces tend is pretty surely definite, and definitely different from what he consciously conceives and determines. It may consequently be actually interfered with by the voluntary efforts slanting toward a true direction. Hence," he adds, "when the new center of energy has been subconsciously incubated so long as to be just ready to burst into flower, hands off is the only word for us. It must burst forth unaided." Okay. So he wants us to know that artistic expression, like, not okay. We think about like Jackson Pollock or like Marcel Duchamp, like putting existing urinal as an art piece, or like Jackson Pollock who basically splashes the paint. That is, for him, that is not a true artistic expression. For him, he puts it like this: spontaneity, meaning spontaneous act of expression that artists or people do, is the result of a long period of activity, or else it is so empty as not to be an act of expression. So let's move on. And here, John Dewey puts, just like he differentiated the experience into two, like the incompleted experience and the consummatory one, he differentiates the impulse and the impulsion. For him, impulse is an initial stage of any complete experience, so it's auxiliary, but the impulsion is a primary force, which is a result of various actions that started with the impulse. So just like we start with recognizing something and then perceive something, we start with impulse and then go to impulsion. And he talks about the difference between just discharging your emotion and expressing. And I'll read that out also. To discharge is to get rid of, to dismiss. To express is to stay by. To carry forward in development, to work out to completion. A gush of tears may bring relief. A spasm of destruction may give outlet to inward rage. But where there is no administration of objective conditions, no shaping of materials, in the interest of embodying the excitement, there is no expression. What is sometimes called an act of self-expression might better be termed one of self-exposure. It discloses character or lack of character to others. In itself, it is only spewing forth. So, that's the difference between discharging and expressing. And when does that transition is made? When is it discharging and when is it expression? Here he uses one example of a crying baby or weeping baby. So here it goes. At first a baby weeps just as it turns its head to follow light. There is an inner urge but nothing to express. As an infant matures, he learns that particular acts effect different consequences. That, for example, he gets attention if he cries, and that smiling induces another definite response from those about him. He thus begins to be aware of the meaning of what he does. As he grasps the meaning of an act at first performed from sheer internal pressure, he becomes capable of acts of true expression. So when you realize the meaning of your action, then you get the possibility or potential to do the true expression. Yes. And then a good quote that I would also like to read out from chapter 4 is something that I already read, the William James one. And he says that he just talked about how discharging becomes an expression, and he wants us to know that in order for an expression to become a real expression or artistic expression, it needs reconstruction. And this part, he says it like this. With respect to the physical materials that enter into the formation of work of art, everyone knows that they must undergo change. Marble must be chipped, pigments must be laid on the canvas, words must be put together. It is not so generally recognized that similar transformation takes place on the side of inner materials, images, observations, memories, and emotions. They are also progressively reformed. They, too, must be administrated. This modification is the building of a truly expressive act. The impulsion of the seeds as a commotion demanding utterance must undergo as much and as careful management in order to receive eloquent manifestation as marble or pigment, as colors and sounds. Nor are there in fact two operations, one performed upon the other outer material and the other upon the inner and the material stuff. So we need the external material reconstruction and reforming of the external materials, such as pigments or marble or whatever that you're using to create your artwork, but not just the external ones. We need to reform and reconstruct our inner experience and inner emotion as well. What that means is, it could be put like this. When you go through a certain experience, let's call that experience A, and you intake that experience, and your mind will do something, like it'll be fermented and you will develop meanings within it and stuff like that. But what's more important is you don't just discharge that experience that you've gone through, experience A, as experience A. You reconstruct, reform it within you, and then it becomes something else, that more refined and more sophisticated version of it. So that's the poem. We could think about poem. Poets don't just write, blabber all the things that they want to. They refine. They make it sound eloquent. They make it more impactful for people. Why? Because if you just express it here, as he puts it, it's not a truly artistic, expressive form of expression. Yes. And then, so in other words, art is not nature, but is nature transformed by entering into new relationships where it evokes a new emotional response. What I just said in a more refined form. So this chapter is long. I mean, page-wise, it's quite long, but the message that he wants to give out to us is quite simple. So I don't want to drag this too long. I'm just going to finish out with the conclusion that he wants us to know, and then I will come back with chapter 5. So the conclusion is this. Okay, no French. On the contrary of usual people's belief, which is artistic expression is something that is spontaneous and something that is like blurted out, something that is discharged, because the artist himself or herself is too genius. They can just like blurt it out, but it's not like that. John Dee wants us to know that the artistic expression is not a discharge of a raw emotions, but rather it gets born when past experiences meet the present and go through a fermenting period within the artist, or not even an artist, but everybody is an artist, I think. So that's the complete message that he wanted us to know here, and I agree with him. I agree like 100% with this chapter. Whenever, since it's only 13 minutes or so, I'll add a little bit of my story. So when you go through an experience, I went through a lot of experience because I'm more on the empiricist side of human being, and I would like to go through a lot of experiences as much as possible, whether it's good or bad, because I believe that it flourishes. It will make myself flourish, because if I do connect, if I make it into a consummatory experience, as he puts it, I will be able to improve and develop within myself, and I will become a better me, and I will learn from it. If I made a mistake that I regret, then I will try my best to not make the mistake afterwards, because I already gained the meaning from that experience, and I will avoid that. And that is artifying my life. I am making my life itself is an art. So if you put it this way, then you could do it too. You trying to be a better you is just like sculpting sculptor chipping and sculpting the marble, you are sculpting your own marble, which is you, whether it's a literal outside superficial side of you or what the mindset, whatever that is. Very important. So I hope you had a good message from this chapter. And chapter 5, it's also similar, but I'll come back with some more good stories. So thank you for watching, and if you like it, like the video, and subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you on the next chapter. Bye.